Okay, I think we should kick off. It's now just got 7:05 here. Whilst we're talking about time zones. Usual format. I think you all know, you've all been here often enough to know what that is. So meeting is being recorded. It'll get switched off virtual bar time. So save your juiciest comments for then, unless you're free to have them re-aired. Gary is stuck on a train and delayed, for those of you who didn't hear, so he's going to join us in a little bit, which means I'm going to push the news back until after Ian's very kindly agreed to kick off for us. So I guess over to you, Ian, if you're ready. I must just check that the sharing is enabled. I think it is.
It looks like it is. Okay, I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
Yep, fine.
Okay,
you're slightly muffled, Ian. I don't know about anyone else. To me, you're slightly muffled. I mean, you can hear you, but it's just a bit.
Is that any better?
Yeah, it is slightly. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So I'll do the slide part. So basically, I'm going to talk about improving semantic search. So you're lucky. I'm not going to give you the same talk that I gave at Engage, which is actually now posted live. So if you want to watch it, that's on YouTube. So basically what to do when semantic search doesn't really work the way you expect it should, which is, from my testing so far, fairly often. And so there's a number of ways we can do this, and this is the only slide. The rest of it's going to be just in FileMaker. We can sort of pre-process our data. We can perform hybrid search. We can use re-ranking techniques. We can pre-process prompts, and we can pre-process data. Domain-specific models I've put in there, but I'm not going to include in the talk tonight because I've not quite got around to actually implementing that in the thing that I'm going to show. So I've got a sample file, and my sample file, if I just go and hang on. So I'm just trying to reconnect to my, so I'm going to run this off screen sharing on my Mac Studio just because that's a lot faster. So I've got a data file that I downloaded from Kaggle. Kaggle is a website that has a lot of data sets for machine learning purposes. So if you want to try out things in machine learning, they've got a huge number of data sets. And I've got a data set from Vestiaire. It's a fashion data set of products that people have got for sale on their website. And there's 900,000 records. And if I just start off searching, saying I need something, it allows us to search for products just based on the descriptions. I'll just select a model here. If I say I need something glamorous for a party, and a search, this search is just your basic FileMaker semantic search. So that's going to take a moment or two because it is 900,000 records. So I'm just going to let that run just so you can kind of get a sense of how long that takes. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at, okay, so that's come back. It's returned 40 records, and they're sorted in order of sort of a score of what's the closest to the query. Now, there's two kinds of similarity here that I'll start off with explaining that. The similarity here is the cosine similarity that's calculated by Claris, by FileMaker. And then I've got a re-ranking score. So basically what I'm doing is, after I do the FileMaker semantic search, I'm calling a re-ranking API. And the re-ranking API takes my 40 records that I got as results, and it compares the text in my query to the text in the data, and then basically comes up with a different ranking of what's the closest. So I sorted it by the re-ranking score. So you can see the similarity scores with cosine similarity are between 0 and 1. The re-ranking scores tend to be between -10 and 10. So you can see the highest value is a 4.8. And if I scroll down, the reason that I've done 40 records is to show some examples that really don't fit. That FileMaker in the semantic search, you can see here when I said I need something in parameters for party, it returned a whole load of stuff. I'll be quite honest, I just chose the fashion data set because it's got a lot of records and it's also got a lot of fields that can be searched upon. All those of you who know me know that I'm incredibly fashion conscious and dress remarkably well all the time. So I know it may seem a little bit odd that I've chosen this, but anyway, that's just, it's the data set that I've chosen to work with because it gives a few good examples, I thought. If I look at the, actually, if I just open up Define Database, these are the fields we've got. So it basically, what I did was I downloaded this CSV file, the 900,000 records. I converted it to a FileMaker file. And we've got things like product type, name, description, keywords, gender target, category, season, condition, a whole load of things that somebody would need to search on. Country. I'm not, because it's an example, I'm not looking at all of these, but it just gives you a sense of what's there. So the search that we performed happened on the server. Given the Claris Engage keynote is now online, and they've said a couple of things about server, you can know that semantic search in the new version is going to happen on the server. So that's going to make it faster than the current versions, because currently in the current version, if I tried to do a search for 900,000 records with semantic search, the first time I tried it, it would drag all those 900,000 embeddings across my network down to my computer. It would be incredibly slow. So we're going to be getting a bit of an improvement there by doing it server side. And you can see that the search took maybe, 30 seconds, which for close to 1 million records is not bad. But we can do a bit better. And one of the things we can do is, if I say, I want to buy an Alexander Queen leather biker jacket in red. If we try a different approach, I'll just run that here. Basically, it's talking to the LLM. And that's done. So that's like 2 or 3 seconds. So for close to 1 million records, that's pretty good. And I'll just describe what I've done. Actually, what I've done is, the first thing I did was I asked a large language model to extract various attributes from my query, like what's the brand, what's the color, what's the material, things like that. It could do more, but anyway. And if I just go to the script and run that, so what we're doing is we're extracting the structured data from the user prompt. And if you just bear with me a moment through all this, we do our insert from URL. I'll come back to this in a second. The LLM is local, so I'm using, it's running in Llama, and I'm using a Gemma 3 12 billion parameter model, which seems to be a good combination of fast and powerful. And then what I do is I'm checking to see in here, I'm basically looking for the attributes. I'm looking for what's the brand, what's the material. Then what I do is I then go with my embeddings. I go into find mode and I set the brand field to my brand variable that I just extracted from the query and material. I'm only doing the two, just the brand and the material, but just to kind of show the proof of concept sort of idea. And perform a find. So what we've now done is index searches in FileMaker are so fast that what I've done is we've gone from 900,000 records down to just under 3,000. Now, a semantic search on 3,000 records is going to be quite quick. Let's run that. And then you can see here that we've got our results. So we've got first result is Alexander McQueen, red leather biker jacket, and so forth going on. And you can see that it's interesting that the re-ranking score and the FileMaker cosine similarities don't always agree. So if I scroll down towards the end of the 40 records, you can see we've got records that are still got reasonably high cosine similarities, but the re-ranking model thinks they're not a very good match. But so essentially what the re-ranking model does is it's another type of language model. And what we do is we pass in our query and we pass in the descriptions. We pass in all of them. So in this case, we're passing in 40 records worth of data, and it compares each one of those individually to each other and to the query, and it decides which one best matches our query. So it's something that you do after you've done a semantic search. So for example, here, you can see this this one here, bought as a present for prom 3 years ago. It's shown up with like a reasonably high, actually, cosine similarity, but I can't really see very much in the way of relationship to it. And the re-ranking model basically has down-rated it quite a bit. So that's one approach we can do there. And again, the data that we've extracted here is like that. Now, I'll just show you a couple of experiments I was playing around with. I was playing around with different models. So if I try a Gemma 3 model, it's a 1 billion parameter model. So it's quite a small large language model, but it's really, really fast because it's small. I mean, actually, you didn't even see the insert from URL pop up. It's so fast. But it's not necessarily been as good as at picking up, extracting the information from our query. So it's got the color right, it's got the brand right, it's missed the material. And if I go to like a large model here, that's a 27 billion model. By the way, down here you can see in my GPU history, you can see the queries to the large language models hitting the GPU. So if I do the large model, the 27 billion parameter model, you can see that even on a Mac Studio, it's having to think quite a bit. Well, actually, the first thing it needs to do is it needs to load a very large model into RAM. So the model, I think, is 17 gigabytes in size. So the first thing it needs to do is load this. And then the processing, you can see the GPU is working, much more work there to do that. But it's going to give us a much more accurate kind of extraction of the data from that. So I found that quite interesting. And if we change that and just add a little more, it's interesting actually just playing around with the queries and seeing how the results change. At least I found it quite interesting. So if I say extract, this one's going to be a little bit quicker because that model's been loaded. And you can see that we've now got, more information. We've got the condition being shown as excellent. But what's also happened is that the ranking here has changed a bit. That now condition has become more important in how the results are ranked. So you're probably wondering, how do we actually do that extraction part? If I just run through the script, this is like just code that is very much test code development. So it's kind of messy. But you can see here, we come down to a prompt. And if I go into the script, so hold on a second, that's the wrong part. Sorry. Sorry. I will show the prompt part first. So the prompt, we're basically saying evaluate the following search criteria. Now, playing around with the prompt actually has quite significant differences in how it works. And different models seem to want to be prompted in different ways. So I'm saying return brand, color, condition, gender target, and material only if they're explicitly present in the document. If a field is missing, return NA for that target, for that field. And then the next thing we do is that we need to return structured data. And you need to use a model that supports structured responses, structured data. And if you do that, so the models I've chosen, Llama 3.1, Gemma 2, Gemma 3, they all support structured outputs. Thinking models won't generally do this. But you can see that what we've got is saying we specify a model, we stream false, we don't want to get a streaming response, we tell it what our prompt is, and then the format type object tells us that it's going to give us back an object. And then here we're saying the properties are the color, which is a string. The material is a string. So we're getting all strings. You can also specify that some of these properties need to be mandatory, that it must return them. I've not done that because what I found was when I did that, that if the input prompt was missing that attribute, it would hallucinate, it would make up something. So I found taking that out and making it optional seemed to address that. So anyway, by doing that, basically what we're going to get back, we do our insert from URL. And if we look, our result, okay, so the context, basically that's giving us the tokens, done the reason, and then down here, down here is what we're actually interested in. You can see our response has got the brand, color, condition, materials, gender target. And it's given us that back in a JSON structure. So FileMaker knows what to do with JSON, so we can deal with that. And then from there, like I said before, what I'm doing is I'm parsing that, and I'm basically going into find mode. I'm performing index searches on the fields that I can search on to reduce the number of records we're searching on. But also, I mean, index search in FileMaker is really fast. It's really accurate. We know it works. So that's kind of what I've done there. Okay. What else? What else? We can, there's a number of other things we can also do. We can rephrase our prompt. And if you look at this here, if you think and you want to search about this, there's a lot of extraneous stuff here that is going to get embedded, but actually doesn't add any information to the search. For example, I want to buy. That's not going to be included in any of the data that we're searching against. So if we rephrase our input prompt, and so we've got a rephrased one where it says biker jacket, leather red, Alexander McQueen. And what that's done is that's removed all the extraneous stuff that is not giving information that we actually want to search on. Now, what I haven't done is that ideally what we want to do is we want to have our search criteria processed in the same way that our data is processed. So ideally we'd want to do that same thing on the data that we're going to search against and then generate embeddings on that rephrased product description. However, given I've got 900,000 records here and I kind of was playing around with this today, I've not done that. But what we can do is we can still, basically, we could run that sort of same process on our rephrased result. And it gives us something a bit different. But yeah, so those are a couple of things we can do here. Like I said, this is stuff I've been playing around with and just trying to get it working. So there's a few other things I found kind of interesting. That we've got the description of the product as entered by the person who's selling it. But we probably actually want to calculate, like build up some kind of generated data value, like a pre-processed generated data value that's been normalized, that's been corrected for spelling, that kind of stuff, that we probably want to do that. The other one here, this is the example I was looking for. Sorry, it's a bit hard to see here. But if you look at all this, there's a load of I was about to say information, but it's not information. There's a load of stuff here that we would actually want to strip out and not include at all, because the product description is now including information about the sales terms. And we don't really want to do semantic search. If we're searching for the product based on the product attributes, the sales terms and discounts and that kind of stuff, we probably really want to strip that out. So that's the kind of thing that we would want to pre-process to remove, I think. I've not tried that yet, but yeah. I've not done a lot of experiments yet with different models, different embedding models, but different embedding models do produce different results. You ideally want to use a domain-specific embedding model. And if you can't get a domain-specific embedding model, then sort of fine-tuning an embedding model is an option. But that's a fairly large undertaking to fine-tune embedding models. Because you've got things like, okay, if I take this, for example, data viewer, just go here. token count, and I think that's the product description. So it's saying we've got 20 tokens here in this, but if I just monitor that, and if I do this, so it said that Alexander McQueen is 3 tokens, but Alexander McQueen is the brand. You would ideally expect Alexander McQueen is going to be 1 token rather than 3. So I suspect, I'm not certain, but I suspect that a fashion-specific model would return 1 token for that. Oh, that's interesting. So if we do, because I was thinking if we basically convert it into 1 word, I was wondering, is that going to reduce it down to 1 token, but it's actually added another one, made it 4. So that's not what I expected. So that's, yeah, I'm not sure what to do about stuff like that, but you would expect that brand names ideally would be treated as a single token because you're going to get a more accurate search on it. So that's okay. That's like another rabbit hole for me to go down. So I'm not sure. Sorry, I'm just gonna have a quick peek at the chat window to just in case anybody's got any questions.
I know when
Oh, sorry, Chris, you just said something.
a word is tokenized, leading space is included in the token, and so by adding that underbar, I think you made that space stop being incorporated into McQueen and it became its own token. I wonder if a hyphen would be treated differently.
No,
It's not,
interesting.
but yeah, a space would be part of McQueen. It would be space McQueen as a token. Or maybe space Mick and Queen could be treated separately.
That's probably what it's doing. Yeah. Actually, this does raise an interesting point because the get token count is not 100% accurate. Claris have chosen a model for that, and so it's providing the token count for their chosen tokenizer, which is not necessarily the tokenizer that is going to be used by the embedding model that you choose. So it's probably not going to be dramatically different in terms of count, but it is just something to bear in mind if you're getting really, really, really kind of down into the detail on it. So yeah, so I was originally hoping to just take a contract and a PDF contract and generate embeddings for that and show the difference between a standard model and an industry specific, like an embedding model that's been designed for contracts, because there are differences. And the one, if you're dealing with contracts, the embedding model designed for contracts is going to give you better results. So I've been hoping to do that, but I just didn't have the time really to do it today. So are there any questions? Like I said, I didn't have a presentation prepared, but I've been playing around with this today and found it interesting. So does anyone have any questions around this?
Yeah, I had a question about when you're doing your ranking.
Yeah.
When are you doing that ranking? Are you doing it if you narrow the found set down using a traditional search, or are you doing it after the semantic search, right at the end?
I'm doing it right at the end because one of the things it does is it compares every record against each other. So
So you want them.
it's doing a lot more work. So I've got, well, actually the API is running here. But yeah, not that you can really tell a lot from that, but the model is comparing them all to one another
Mhm.
and saying, of these, if we could call them candidate results, maybe. It basically tries to, given that set, it tries to then sort of reorder them based on how they all compare, as opposed to just what's the semantic similarity to
Yeah.
the vector embedding of that text there or that text.
So if you wanted to rely more on that ranking than the similarity, that would presumably be another step.
It is. It is. So let's populate embeddings, extract. Oh yeah, here we are. Yeah, I've just done another script that now FileMaker does not natively support the re-ranking. So I've written an API in Python to do that. And essentially it's just it's a standard API, just basically takes the input text, rather JSON, and then it loads the a re-ranking model and gives us back our results as JSON.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
if you were to do something like that in production, would you convert that to like an MCP server?
Could do, but to be honest, we're dealing with FileMaker, and FileMaker is the insert from URL talking to, it's just like a regular RESTful API. So it's,
Yeah, I mean, I think the embedding the model, the re-ranking model, there would have to be an MCP server out there for you to access, right? Isn't that what you're getting at, Chris, or?
No, I'm, to me, the virtue of MCP is that if something changes or you update a version of something like that, that you just push it to the MCP server, and then anybody consuming that, is automatically gotten on the new gear, as it were. It sort of
that-
helps versioning.
I think that would be the same, to be honest, with the RESTful API. Though with the RESTful API, I'd want to keep the old version around just in case for someone who's not upgraded. So yeah, we would have to change. But what it's doing is we're getting back new perform script. Hold on, where have I? Sorry, I'll just run through the process again. Yeah, my local notification is not working for some reason. On a totally different topic. Okay, insert URL. Oh, I should have picked a smaller model. Would have been quicker. Right. Find semantic search. Find. Right, then we do our re-ranking. And down here, what I'm doing is I'm sticking the result. Yeah, so it takes about a second. Our result here. I get my results back like that. So with my content, I've got the record ID, metadata potentially, which I didn't have here, but, and then my ranking score. So that's kind of what comes back from my ranking API. But if FileMaker supported, to get back to your question, eventually, if FileMaker supported MCP, then yeah, we could certainly do it that way.
So Ian, have you?
Yeah.
My first thought in, because obviously this is proper experimenting. Have you done anything with, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 fields in which you record, do this way, and then record that ranking, do something different, record in another field how the ranking comes, do something else, to then see if there are records which are them always have an appearance in this top 40 and what the relative position is, just for the sake of interest more than saying, oh, therefore I use that as the actual ranking if it appears in 4 different methods of doing it. But have you done that to see how much? No,
I haven't. Around about 11 o'clock this morning, I was thinking along those lines, but time kind of caught up. So it's, yeah, like I say, it is kind of, it's all experimental, but this is playing around with it like this is how we get to learn about how it actually works. Because a lot of, I've seen a number of people sort of saying that they've just not had any luck with their little experiments with semantic search. And I think that from what I'm seeing here, it looks like there's a couple, there's some data preparation that needs to go into it, and thinking about pre-processing the query, pre-processing the data, potentially, and it looks like you can get better results that way. Probably considerably better results. And one of the things I was interested in was with like the Gemma 1B model, because it's so small, it's virtually instant. Like I don't even see a delay at all while it's talking. But I found that in terms of extracting the data and rephrasing, it's not quite as consistent as the larger models.
I mean, it's a good example, because if you just look at if you just close that popover, the content, it's like reading social media posts or something like that, or reviews. The content is wildly different. So obviously the promise of semantic search is, if you've got all these things, we can find out if there's anything that might, in some way match what you're looking for.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Obviously,
it's matching.
The other thing is that that's on a continuum.
Yeah.
So the whole using, let's go, our FileMaker data may have much less variance in what that text is, kind of thing, which I would expect that the results would then be very, very different as well.
Yeah, yeah, quite possibly.
Hey, Ian,
Yeah,
you know, a while ago I had done like this similarity keyword. So there's formulas out there for hybrid similarity and keyword searches where you get them both and then you calculate and everything.
yeah.
I'd be interested in seeing like adding that on here and seeing and somehow weighting that in a certain way. I don't know if that would help at all or hurt.
Um, I don't see how it could hurt.
Yeah, it's just another
Um,
thing if you're
it would
you're
be,
working on this improvement, that's one of the, besides the re-ranking, is to add the,
yeah, some kind of like proper scoring on, because what we've got are different issues like
yep,
basically of the records that have been returned, how relevant are they? And then the other thing is like how many records that are relevant were not returned. And I cannot remember the precise term, the technical terms for those, but um, like
sorry,
those,
that like the,
yeah,
well, that might help, because then
I agree.
those would get
I
weighted higher.
definitely, yeah, I definitely agree, and I think that would be quite interesting to.
But I like the idea of all three scores or all three there, not just similarity and, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And then I guess the
yeah.
other thing is though is well, you're probably not going to get into this, just the domain specific terminology. Um, I guess if you're looking at domain specific data, it probably doesn't matter. It's probably going to have the same meaning, so it won't matter.
Well, yeah, I mean, the context as it relates to domains is quite important because the same terminology has so many different meanings.
Yeah.
Um, I've not actually in this demo, I've not even addressed things like chunk sizes or any of that kind of stuff because we're dealing with relatively small, um, you know, 30,
Yeah.
40 tokens at a time. So
Yeah.
I've not even bothered looking at that with regard to this. Though that comes into it. If I was looking at the PDF stuff, then I would need to think about chunk sizes and where do the whole chunking strategy.
Mhm.
Um,
You're actually, if you built this out a little similarity re-ranking, keyword slash lexical, and maybe there's some other, you're almost building an evaluation mechanism and it's not exactly that, but it lets you see, right?
yeah, because I
How
think
the,
one of the things here is that I changed the prompts around quite a lot. I thought actually the prompts are going to be really, really simple, but it turns out that quite small changes in the prompts produced interesting differences in the results. And I think that it does seem to be one of those things where you do need to get down and it's like if you've ever built like say a business model in Excel, you need to kind of wrestle with the data a bit before you actually, and it has the same kind of feeling. Like you need to try a bunch of things, see what results you get, and then and I think you're right that having like the proper scoring for what's the quality of the results, if we can do that,
have you
would,
ever
would
tried, like, if you fed all this data in here and said, what would be the best prompts to find this, or what would be the best prompts to find that? Have you ever tried that kind of AI and AI kind of circle?
that's how I got the first prompts for
Oh, okay. Did I miss that? Sorry.
it.
Sorry.
No, no, yeah, Claude and I had about a 45-minute discussion about that this morning. Sort of where it gave me a prompt. It's like, and actually, it was a really good start. And it's like, okay, that's kind of cool, but like, how can you make it better? And then I asked it, how would you change it for a 1 billion parameter model? And how would you change it for, well, my Mac Studio's only got 32 gigs of RAM, so 27 billion is about the biggest I can run there. I said, how would you change it for a 27B model? And it did give me different prompts. And those prompts did seem to vary depending on the size of the model.
It's interesting though, isn't it though, that some of the promise of how this might be being communicated into the Claris community is a much simpler kind of, oh, you should just be able to walk up and type something in natural language here to be able to run a search, which it will clearly produce some result. But what you've just demonstrated is that actually that's not the whole truth. If you need to consider that your prompt needs to be well written to get the best correlation between the results you really want. And that clearly, you know, the work you've been doing this morning, which is experimental, you'd have to provide somebody almost with a template to say, hey, what are you looking for? Not just the notion of, oh, just type a quick query in here in natural language, because it looks like that's not going to perform as well, and may find results that, as you pointed out at the bottom, appear to have nothing to do with the query at all.
Yeah.
And that's an area nobody's talking about is how, because there's no measurement of this stuff at the moment, but it's clearly not as simple as it first seems.
Yeah, and so some of the stuff that Ronnie showed in the keynote, I've done a project for someone that was something quite similar, essentially querying management information via natural language. And yeah, and to be honest, after a couple of days, I just thought, I'm getting the data out of FileMaker into something else, and then everything became a lot easier. Basically because of the non-standard SQL. The non-standard SQL is going to be an issue. But that's a slightly, that's a digression in a different, I mean, but that's
a whole other topic by itself.
It is very much. But it's, and I think we had a little really quick discussion about that, about naming things at some point. But I still think this is just amazing that this is like running on my computer here. And actually the fact that it works that well is just, it just still feels like magic. We're talking about like, how can you make it better? And yeah, it is better, but the whole, if you step back and think about this, we just typed a natural language query in, and it's given, you know, these results. That's quite amazing.
I'm loath to interrupt this discussion because it's going so well, but we're getting a bit short on time for that.
Okay.
So please, we can revisit it a bit later if you're going to hang around. Other people are hanging around.
Yeah, I think so. Well, thanks for listening to me. So.
No, it was fascinating and it was really interesting as always. It always sparks off new ideas, so it's great to have that. Gary, are you ready with the news?
Sort of.
Sort of. Well, do you want to ring it then?
Everybody, but the wonderful UK transportation system has let me down. But there you go. But I've turned up about 10 minutes ago, so yeah, I'm fine. I'm good to go. So, I will happily present the news. That's not a problem, providing everything works. So give me a second. So right, the news. I'm going to do the news in brief because I've had about 30 seconds to present it and produce it, so it should be fine. But I will go over the stuff. As always with the news, I have to thank Penny because without her, it wouldn't exist. Bearing in mind, as you all know from the last session, I no longer work for Forbidden Planet and Titan. I've moved on to other ventures, but she still provides this for me. That's the loyalty of wonderful staff that I've created, so I will take the benefit for that. I just wanted to cover the key things is that Penny and I spoke about this afternoon, and we went through some key things. Obviously, the key things that they were looking at is the latest update, basically, to the latest version of server. This seems to be the topic of news at the moment. There's a lot of people talking about this. So there's areas of the server-side scripting sessions limited by CPU cores. So it's a big change to what FileMaker have delivered. And I was talking to Penny and Ben about this and going through this process with them. And this is something of interest to her and certainly to what she's been working on. And it certainly seems to be something of interest to the community as at large. It's to do with the amount of sessions you can run on server and how it operates, and the changes of how they've done this infrastructure between certainly a Windows architecture. So have a look at server 21.1.4. It's a worthwhile read. If you're certainly using scripting side of server-side script stuff, it would be worth looking at. PSOS has been changed as well. And this isn't just mentioned on FileMaker server, on FileMaker, the Claris system, which is basically the posting of what they got in Claris. It's also mentioned on other websites all over the place about a change to what FileMaker is doing. So look at what you're doing. If you're doing heavy server interactions with your clients, it's certainly an area you want to look at and see whether or not it has a benefit to you. But a lot of the news stories over the last probably 2 to 4 weeks have been all relating to this update. So clearly Claris are pushing it, clearly everyone else is adopting it as well. So that's a few things here. You got Saline also jumps on this as well. So they're all talking about it. So everyone, this seems to be the topic of conversation at the moment. So if you don't know about it, take a look at various of the screens that I've posted up there. There's various articles out. You can go to Claris directly, or you can go to Saline or wherever you want to go to get the latest information. I wanted to look at this one, and I was going to interact with Tony if he was around, but I don't know that he's around because I messaged him and then he left because something had happened. So this is something about whether having a modal card window or a transactional card window. So it's something that FileMaker apps have basically done a story of. I've taken the extract of this at the start to put on this sheet here. So therefore, in the video that we play back on YouTube and other bits and pieces, we're going to have a read about it, but you can get the link below. But the nice thing is we have a regular member of our sessions, which is Tony, who then contributed to enhancements within this article and areas to improve this. And it's about whether a modal window is transactional or not. So, and whether you can make it work in your favor to make it transactional or whether it's not. So it's a worthwhile exercise. If you're using card views, it's certainly an area you want to focus on and look at. Take this further. This is something that Saline's been talking about, AI, and this has been the topic of conversation for probably close to 6 to 9 months on our sessions. AI is a big thing. We are fortunate and lucky to have key members of staff and key people that live and breathe this sort of technology and forging this technology forward. I have to say I'm a late adopter to this technology. I like it. I loathe it in some areas, but it's certainly an area. But Sarah from Saline basically did a talk about, is AI relevant, is it not relevant, and so forth. And I want to give an idea of this session, the sessions we've run over the last 3 or 4 sessions that we've run here, has certainly sparked my interest, and I wanted to bring it up to everybody, is the fact that if you're not in AI, and I think most people that are on our sessions are already dabbling in it, or if not, well versed in it. But there was something that I was working on in my new company that was doing stuff, and I basically was challenged with the most basic of things. And it's a weird thing to roll your sleeves up and go, I'm going to embrace the technology, put all of my eggs in one basket and hope that it comes back with the right answer. But in my world, I hadn't really exposed myself to AI and hadn't really looked at it from an aspect of a business tool as such. You guys have been doing it in FileMaker for ages. I know there's links with the stuff that I'm involved in with Click, that they're talking about AI and machine learning and that sort of stuff. But one of the things that was true to me at the moment is because of you guys that are on these sessions, and you've inspired me in that respect, and you've forced me down this path, I have ChatGPT, Claude, and so forth, and various questions. But what I was trying to do is, in the company I was in at the moment, we have a way of, in coined terms, we have to distribute stock globally around the world in the company I'm in. And one of the things that our company does is they're based in Belgium, so they work on Euro pallets. It sounds the most basic, simple thing to do, but our UK company that distribute our stock internally within the UK only work on UK pallets, not on Euro pallets. So one of the things I've been working on is to see whether there's a way we can get the European side of the business to pack our shipments on UK pallets, ship it to the UK, have the UK then handle in-house, just move these pallets forward without offloading all the content, reboxing it onto UK pallets from Euro pallets. And I thought this was a concept. I'm relatively new within the new company I'm in. I've only been there 3 months. So it was a bit of a stark reality when I'm then posting these things internally going, how about we do this, do this, do this? And I have various divisions that come back to me and going, well, we don't know how to calculate that. We don't know how to do this, don't know how to do that. And the company in Belgium only ever worked on Euro pallets. So I'm throwing in a question there to them saying, well, how do we move this forward? How do we move this? I am using some sort of technology to then do this. So I looked in the marketplace. There is a company out there. Needless to say, there's various companies that can do all this conversion stuff. It is sort of a basic conversion, but it's basically using AI of taking each box of shipment, because we may have different types of boxes that make up a pallet. We may come up with different permutations of sizes, dims, weights, and so forth to fit on a pallet. We have max dims, max weight. So me sitting here, inspired by you lot that run this session on a regular basis, and without you, we wouldn't exist. And I thought, you've been trumping AI for God knows how long. How about I embrace it and see where we go? So I opened ChatGPT, asked it a load of questions, got hideous answers, I will admit. It was horrendous, to the point it was like, well, how can you ship this? You need to buy a boat, and then you need to buy a plane, and then you need to buy this, that, and the other. I was like, no, forget that. I've asked the wrong question. Simplified the question down, got it to a point where I think with AI, you can then ask these questions in a language, English, or any language form and get the questions right. It took me a while to get the questions right, but in the end, there was this piece of software online that the company was going to buy to several hundreds of pounds a month subscription. And within, I'll be honest, 20 minutes of asking ChatGPT questions, it came back with the answer and then said, oh, you don't have enough bandwidth in your subscription to do it. And this is where I thought, oh, well, I'm going to have to put my hand in my pocket, tell the company I'm going to buy the full version of ChatGPT and move this forward. The outcome was, this is where I thought it was amazing. ChatGPT said, if you're intelligent in writing code, would you like me to give you the VB script to write this code within the back end of Excel for you? I was like, go on then. It gave me the code. I knew how to write that sort of stuff. I took that code, put it into a spreadsheet, made it work, and transformed close to 1,500 different products, and I worked out re-palletized the entire European business onto UK pallets in the space of about 30 seconds. And the guys in Belgium were saying, we've been trying to do that for years, and they couldn't do it. So me being me, I said, well, don't take this for absolute truth. Please check it. So there was 4 or 5 products. We have full pallets. I said, can you drop that? Can you repackage that onto a pallet, count the boxes per pallet, and confirm the numbers are right? It was exactly right. It even told them which way up to pack the box to get that shipment correct, which I've now succumbed to the ways that you guys have all been talking about for a long time, of the fact that these technologies that are out there are there to help you. They are there to benefit you. And I think I think the challenge we have as an industry, or certainly from a development point of view, is how to leverage which technology works right for you, how it then fits the business need, and for you to ask that question correctly. And for me, it's revolutionized how I'm starting to use it. So I'm in ChatGPT every day. I'm in Claude every day now, because why not? Let it leverage the benefit. I was doing something in Click the other day where I was just like, I would like to transform this data set that I was bringing to Click. And the system not only worked out to transform it for me in a better way than I would have approached it myself, having 5-6 years experience within that platform, but it also then said, would you like me to optimize this for large data sets? I went, go on then. And it totally transformed the code. And I checked it and it was rock solid. So the only thing I would say is if we're not using this, I don't think it's a substitute for development. And this is where I sit with this. I really don't think it's a substitute for knowing the technology and the platform you work in. We work in the field of FileMaker excellence, which is great. But I think if you've got a base level of that, these tools are there to help you. If you're not on with AI in any shape or form, use it. You guys all know how to use it. You know the code behind it. I think it is absolutely a benefit. And I think with what platform vendors are doing, whether it's Click, whether it's Claris, whether it's anyone, and they are realizing this is a tool to be embraced. This is not a tool to be ignored. So that's a real world scenario. And I wanted to mention from what Sarah was talking about when to use it, how to use it, when I embrace it. I have a direct correlation to doing that in a business orientated frame. So, and it really worked in more ways than I could have expected. So saved me a bundle of time. I could have sat there for a week trying to write this code and I would have worked it out eventually, but it took me minutes in the end and it transformed all that data for me. So it absolute revelation for me. Never really rolled my sleeves up to do it. Never had the time in my old job to do it. Not a chance. So I'm fortunate and privileged that I get that opportunity to do that now. And I think this is something going forward. So further on the news, I wanted to mention the fact that this came from Penny. She's an advocate of learning, as you all know. Claris have improved the interface to their learning technologies and their academy section. The interface looks quite neat and tidy. It's much better way of learning. They presented it in a better way. And if you are following the process of getting your certifications and various learnings, then certainly Claris has done a fabulous job in updating that and making it easier and accessible for everybody. So that's certainly something to look at. This is something that I'm going to want everyone's input on. Events, I've pulled together some stuff, what's out there in the industry. This isn't organized in any date format. It's just because there are various tools out there that do this sort of stuff, but they're the key things. You've got the sheet, it's on the recording and so forth. I wanted to highlight the FMBug 81, which is now, well done, Joel. So I'll take the credit on that. It's on the feeds. It's the fact that it's there as an event and a meetup and that sort of stuff. So that's fine. I'll take ourselves first. There's various places all over the globe that are advocating ways of learning, whether it's tuition, whether it's sessions, whether it's conferences and so forth. I've highlighted a few here. I think, and I know it was on the agenda to have a topic of conversation about events, but I think I want to push this open to the floor. So obviously we've got Engage EU, that's in the pipeline. It's going to happen. That's happening. As you can see, there's a load of events there. There's stuff in Istanbul, there's stuff in the US, there's stuff in Europe, there's stuff in Australia. I mean, the irony is there's a lot of things happening all over the globe, and that's fine. And we're a multinational sort of event. We don't care where you come from or where you come to look at us. But I certainly want to put it out there as the fact that, as I said before, please let's have this an open discussion about what events are coming up, where they are, what their benefits are, and so forth. So we know Claris Engage is coming on. So I'll leave it up to you to leave the floor open to everyone to discuss this. So if anyone wants to or not, it's your call.
Well, looks like you're missing Vienna.
I am missing Vienna. I am absolutely missing Vienna because we mentioned that in the last session anyhow. So the weird thing is on Claris's site, and I will say this, Claris's site does not have Vienna listed that I could see in the events page.
But Claris is sponsoring it, and I did look today, and it still says there's 20 tickets left because it's a limited space.
Yeah, they are not listing all events. I mean,
I agree with that, and that's why I wanted to bring it up in the discussion, because that is everything that they're listing, but that's not everything that's going on. We mentioned Vienna in the last session, and I have to say I'm not ignoring it, but I've pulled from that link Claris events, but I will add on more for the next session about everything else that's going on. So.
Christian, you maintain a list of events, don't you?
yeah, well, I have this scripts running from time to time, every few days, and they go and download all the pages from Claris for all the countries and assemble this table for events on my website. So the top list is what I manage myself, and the list on the bottom shows things from the Claris website.
Oh, we can't see your screen, but
Oh, the link is in the chat. You can go there yourself.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, right, okay.
Well, to be fair, what I will do is I will share his screen. So right now, so everyone can see it, because I will trust that to be more accurate than anything else that we've got. So, that's the honest truth. If you can all see that, fingers crossed. Can you see that, everyone?
Yes, yeah.
Good.
Yes, that's a really useful resource, Christian.
Thanks to Christian. This is more up to date than anything else out there, so I will take that and run with it. Thank you very much.
We'll let the marketing team know that they should get the list updated.
That would be useful, Doug. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I think we've killed that one now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to leave it on the recorded so people can make a note of all the links that are on Christian's page.
And,
So,
I'll put a link to your page on the FMBug site if you want, Christian.
absolutely, I think that's a good idea, and I think I'll reference that going forward. So thank you very much, Christian. Thank you very much.
So yes, many thanks. I'm going to get Gary to shut up now, which is
I'm done. I'm absolutely done, to be honest, mate. The only thing I'm going to add on is I wanted to say thank you to the people that donated towards us at the last event.
Absolutely.
We announced this last time that any funding will be useful. We appreciate everything that everyone has given, and thank you. That's all I need to say on that, and there's no more I want to say on it. So we'll bring back the link at some point in the future, but I appreciate what everyone's done. So
it's on the website if anyone wants it.
Yeah.
Yeah, not much appreciated. So I think if you're ready, Doug, we're over to you.
Yeah, so we're working currently on having a release of FileMaker 2025, which will be product version 22. As we mentioned at Claris Engage, we're looking to actually sort of do a July, what we call early summer, so June, July release of that. And one of the big things that everyone's talking about, and we are trying to actually help, well, getting people to actually sort of start really using properly within FileMaker, is around AI. One of the things that we've noticed is, even though we've created sort of blogs on how to actually install LLMs, we still have a lot of people going, it's kind of a pain, not really sure what I'm doing, kind of doesn't really sort of work for me. And then they start using OpenAI, and I think they get to the same problem that you kind of having, Gary, is when you start overusing it, then you're basically getting charged, then you don't really know how to control it. There was a lot of events or sessions at Engage where people saying kind of the stuff like the problem with public cloud is that eventually it's going to cost you basically kind of a bit of money if you don't actually sort of control it properly. And one of the slide that we showed at Engage, let me just find it again, is this one. So let me share that quickly with you. Share my screen. So one of the things that basically we shared at Engage is around this whole idea of we actually make it easier for you to be able to actually leverage everything that potentially can be done with AI. So the work that we're actually doing now is a lot of it is around this idea of like the reasoning, is how and where can actually sort of do the work of sending your data so that you can actually have an engine that's going to basically do all the great work around it. And the more work we were doing on this idea of LLM servers, the more we're thinking is, well, actually there is one place that we can actually put it where everyone's going to be able to actually easily install an open LLM on their system. And because if they know the interface, then it's going to be easier for them to be able to actually sort of use it. And whilst we're actually sort of doing that, we were like, well, we're going to have to actually sort of do fine tuning. We're going to have to actually be able to actually have regression training, or pretty much everything that long-term people are going to be able or need to actually leverage with AI. So even though there's going to be kind of new stuff around sort of this LLM inside of FileMaker, the one thing that we've noticed is it's better to bring everything now, and then we'll do webinars and sessions to get people to be able to actually start using it properly. So let me share my admin console of FileMaker server. So on the latest version, what we've actually added on the admin console is something kind of a very standard, which is basically a new service, which we are calling currently AI services. For those on the ETS, you'll see the name change. We haven't finalized basically this whole section, but in a lot of places, this is what we're going to have running. The idea around it is basically we want people to be able to easily install the LLM server on their machines. And we know that people basically know how to use the admin console. And because we have a licensing system that's actually kind of open, you can have multiple install of a FileMaker server. And you could potentially decide to actually run this FileMaker server with no FileMaker database on it. And you'll have basically a FileMaker server, LLM server running on the side of it. So the install process is actually very straightforward. The first time you actually sort of launch it, if I kill it, you'll basically have no information. The first time you install it, you have to actually install a software called MiniForge. It's basically an environment to be able to actually run the OpenLLM models. It's going to install everything for you in pretty much 5 minutes. All you have to actually download is a file from GitHub. You put it on the machine, and then basically it just runs everything for you. It downloads stuff for Python, pretty much does all the work for you. So everything that used to be on the engineering blog, you can forget that. All you have to actually sort of do is install that stuff. Once you actually have it running, it's basically going to assign you an endpoint, which is essentially the IP address of your machine. Refresh rate on that is not really great for the time being. We're still working on it. It's just a JavaScript interface. So if I click here and go back, so this is all the information you're going to have. You'll be able to actually log in or link your server with your Hugging Face token. So if you have a Hugging Face token, you can easily sort of get it. So if you go into your settings, then you can see you have got access tokens. You can create a token. Basically, it links your Hugging Face account to your FileMaker server. And then that way you can download any models that has any EULA that needs to be approved or anything that needs to be validated. So once you have that, when you want to download new models, it makes it a lot easier. Then we have the list of all the stuff you're going to be able to actually sort of do. So you'll be able to do image and text embedding, generation of text, fine-tuning, RAD, all of that in an easier fashion. The menu still being worked on because when you click on the advanced, there's a lot of information. But basically, we're giving you all the tools to be able to actually sort of control everything that you want to do with your models. Then you have your keys. That's basically the security, which is really important for us. So that way, when you're actually having your server running, you assign a key, and then you can actually give that key to other users or put it in your script so that they can actually sort of talk to that server. A couple of options that you have is you can decide when the expiration actually sort of is going to be, so depending on the month, and then the services that the LLM is going to be able to actually sort of use. The next bit basically is around the models that you can have running. So by default, we give you 4. So text embedding one, the image one that pretty much everyone uses. We give you a multilingual text embedding. We give you the latest version of Gemma from Google. And then this is the one that I just downloaded to actually sort of have a try. This is the one, there's one that will basically preload every time. The other, you just need to actually download and make sure they run. Something like, so the Google one, you need to actually have a Hugging Face ID because there is it's not really a contract, it's like a EULA where you accept the terms and policies to be able to actually use it. If you don't actually have a Hugging Face, you won't be able to actually use that environment. If you want to add a new one, so if I delete, copy and paste the text. So if I delete that one, it's going to remove it. And then when I want to go back, all I have to do is basically type in the model name and when it's running, type of model that it's going to be doing, allow my FileMaker server to actually download the stuff from Hugging Face, add model, basically it starts running in the background. This one is really small and basically now I can actually start using it. Some for the others, I can just download it quickly and basically would run in the background. And the last part, I'm not going to go too much in details, but basically it's around fine-tuning a model. So we are putting some new script steps inside FileMaker as well. One of the things we're actually sort of doing is able to get FileMaker to actually work with what we call, what is called JSON-L file. So basically it's the training file in JSON format where you're going to be able to actually sort of do some fine-tuning around that. When we have this shipping out, we're going to do quite a few webinars and we'll invite experts on the community live sessions so that people can actually go through all the terminology, how it works, what you can do with it, so that people can actually have an idea of potentially what they can actually sort of do with it. And whilst we're actually sort of doing the work, one of the things we realize is because you actually have this running on a server and then you have databases running normally really close to this engine, we went for the idea of actually, so if I log in here and let me just, well, I'm trying to share my whole screen, probably better this way. Share my whole screen, boom. So if I go to my recent, go to this test file. So the idea basically is currently is in FileMaker 2024, when I'm actually running the perform semantic find, it's going to do it locally. So even though it's not looking through a lot of data, it's actually going to do locally. What we're going to do basically on next version is make sure that every performance semantic find actually happens on the server. Because one of the great things that you can do is you can actually control how many returns you want to get and all the information. And so it's a lot quicker actually just running it on the server and then afterwards just sending back the record ID to the client, and then the record ID can be shown through your layout. So if I just do connect that one, and if I do my quick example, which is always the same, Donald Trump. Oops, sorry. You'll still get the same result. I didn't connect. Hang on. Oh, sorry, it's an old demo. Hang on. Hang on a sec. Let me just blah 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 blah. Let's try that. Let's try that. Live demos. Copy that. See if that works. Let's try everything. Well, see if the gods of demo like me tonight. Distort, connect, and then try that. There you go. So it does the same stuff. It's actually running from a server on AWS. So basically the speed that you would actually sort of get locally, you will get pretty much anywhere. And at the same time, what we're actually sort of doing this work, we're like, well, if people are going to do more stuff using everything around AI and better stuff on JSON, let's improve what we can do with JSON. So one of the new features that you're going to be able to see, and I'll give you a quick look of next version of FileMaker, is around parsing of JSON data. So Clay's been working on making JSON quicker, more reliable, and the engine behind it work in a nicer way. So some of the stuff that we've done on the JSON side of it, so if I do there is a new script that we're calling, which is called JSON parse. And the idea is that we can actually parse JSON data in a quicker way than we can do when we use sort of get element or other stuff like that. So work is being done. It's not final. So we're not going to do like massive demo tonight and in the future. But the idea is with this function, it's going to be, or with this script step, it's going to be a lot quicker to be able to actually sort of parse data that you're getting through JSON data. And so another thing is we'll do this summer and then sort of early on FY26 for us is around the importance of actually stuff that you can do with JSON, how you actually sort of move stuff around, and all the work that is being done on the engine, so that instead of actually sort of verify or sort of translating JSON data into FileMaker text data and then back and forth, which is really slow, we're going to start trusting a bit more the engine so that we can tell it, hey, by the way, when I'm translating FileMaker text to JSON, you just do it in one way because you know the engine is done properly. So there's no reason to actually get the data back and forth all the time between the FileMaker sort of text format and the JSON format. So hopefully that will actually increase a lot of the work. And because there is going to be a lot more need to actually do stuff with JSON and JSON-L files to do fine-tuning and reaction stuff like that, we have to make that a lot quicker in the whole sort of department on top of that. Other work that's being done as well is around some of the work that we're doing for Studio and Connect. So for the current version of FileMaker, we're using what we call ESS Plus, which is a way for FileMaker and Studio to be able to actually sort of talk to one another, which is not really quick, has a few issues, and it just looks at data. So there's not a lot of stuff that we could actually sort of do long term between FileMaker, Studio, and Connect, because everything that we wanted to actually sort of do is like, well, the ESS Plus isn't going to be able to actually sort of do it. And we know we have a great technology, is we have a great protocol called OData API, and there's a lot more thing we can do with OData. And because we had OData being slow because it has to go through the web server of the admin console, we were like, well, we need to actually sort of improve that. So we've done work so that now it's pretty much going to have its own sort of entry into the data file in the FileMaker server. And because of all the new functions that actually sort of exist, we're going to use that as the backend protocol to actually get data flow between FileMaker and Studio and Connect. So essentially, your data stored in FileMaker can be called and viewed inside of Studio. And instead of using ESS, Connect is going to be the engine that's going to basically get the triggers when data is being updated either on the FileMaker side or the Studio side. And because one of the big requests, or the biggest request we have on Studio is for people to go is, well, you've actually allowed me now to actually have access to Studio, but I need to be able to actually get the data back and forth from FileMaker. And especially, so I'm going to share that as well. We recently did a small update of Studio, which is not that small, because within it now, you have the option to be able to actually do custom views. So I'm going to share that quickly. Zoom. Share. So on your Studio account, if you have one, I think imagining all the partners have one, a lot of you actually have one. In your hub now, you're going to have the option to create what we call a custom views, which essentially basically is being able to actually use all the various type of objects that we have in the single views and actually put them into a kind of a FileMaker sort of layout. So if I create a new one, I'll choose data from there. Basically, you're kind of in the FileMaker world. You have a blank screen, and then on top of that, you can add objects. So you can add fields that already exist in your spreadsheet or your data table, or you can have new ones, and you can use all of those. You can have data controllers as well. You can have some objects, so you can actually have multiple charts on the same layout, and then all the tools to be able to actually sort of create various stuff. So if I select the first name, basically what I'm getting is a group of normally a field, a label, and I can actually sort of move down around. And as you can see in the background, I have a grid sort of area. So because we want to still be able to actually get users to be able to do responsive design kind of easily, we still created a grid. So you're actually moving the group or the object basically anywhere on the layout, and basically it's going to stick with the grid system that we actually sort of built. We'll see in the future eventually if we can actually make this grid smaller, but to be able to actually all do the calculation, that's the size you're going to have on it. There's a couple of options that basically you have. So you can decide whether or not to actually show the grid line. You can actually select what is the object label default field. There's a various sort of automation. Color scheme, we haven't really played too much on top of that, but the idea that eventually you'll be able to actually do custom a lot of places, and then you have the size of the content, so you can actually have a large layout if you want to. If the largest one that we kind of say works really nicely is 41 pixel, it should be point actually, or pixel. But then you can do a lot of stuff. When you click on that object, you can tell it basically to kind of do a lot of stuff, similar stuff that you have in FileMaker. Maybe not as deep for the time being, but this is where we're going to play around with this. So this is going to be kind of nice. We're going to do some as well, some sort of webinars in the future, so people can actually have an idea of how they can actually build stuff, how they can create buttons. When you have buttons, then you can decide the type of action that you want it to do. So there's a lot of stuff that basically we're going to start sort of getting people to get accustomed to that. And then once we have this OData working better and with a new connector inside of Connect, it's going to be a lot easier for people to be able to actually sort of grab data back and forth between Studio and FileMaker. Other thing we're working on as well is in terms of the menus on the side. So currently you have the hubs, you have the users. So that's where the user, you can invite them. You can use SSO now. So now pretty much within Studio, you can use Earth providers or Summer providers. We've made it as easy as we basically could imagine the layout. Essentially, all you have to do is enter your client ID from your provider, the secret if it has one. SAML is a bit different because it's only using a meta URL. And then once you actually give the meta URL, which is basically all the information is actually stored, you click apply, and then you're going to have afterwards a specific URL, so you can actually give that to your users. So they won't actually log in through the normal sort of Studio entry page. They'll go through the app entry page or entry page, and they'll move back into Claris Studio. You'll have another section which probably will be called data sources, but this is where you'll be able to actually link directly your Studio account and your Studio sort of organization to your FileMaker server, so that any tables that you have inside of FileMaker with the right privileges would actually appear inside of Studio. So you could easily be able to actually sort of call it in any of the views that you're actually sort of creating from here. So this should actually be coming, we're hoping sort of in the summertime. We'll do stuff around it when it actually sort of comes out. But it should be a lot easier for people to start leveraging Studio for what it's meant to be doing, which actually is creating powerful sort of web apps using FileMaker data in the background. So we're hoping really to actually have that all working this July for you to start sort of enjoy kind of easily. That's pretty much kind of the overall. There's going to be more stuff coming in, as I said, in the summer. But this was to give you kind of an overview of some of the stuff that we shared at Engage and some of the work that's been done for the future. So quickly look if there's any question in the chat. There's no questions. Anyone's got any questions for me about anything?
I've got a comment.
Yeah.
It's all very promising. I really like the direction it's going in. It's great.
Yeah. Oh, there's one last stuff. Sorry, I forgot about that one. It's really important. So as FileMaker users, people always complain that we do stuff and it's always kind of hard. Like, so I was mentioning basically the stuff on AI. There was the other one basically around let's encrypt. So people were going, oh, let's encrypt. It's a bit of a pain because every time I've got to do your stuff, it's too much of a pain, so I'm not doing it. So we now basically, you will have one button to request your Let's Encrypt certificate. So when you click on that, all you have to do, and it's the only thing that people actually have to do, is they'll have to actually have a domain name they can control. They'll just need to actually open port 80 to that server, so the FileMaker server, so that Let's Encrypt can actually talk to it. And then all you have to do is give basically FileMaker server your domain name and then just say, hey, request the Let's Encrypt certificate, and all the stuff that we basically put on the blog is actually doing everything in the background. It takes roughly about 25-30 seconds, and then bang, you have now a fully SSL'd FileMaker server, and you have nothing else to do. The only thing you have to do is actually do the restart. That's the one thing which is always still a bit of a pain, but after that, it's kind of now running properly, and people actually get to it. And then afterwards, or not even here, you can actually create a schedule so that you can actually renew your certificate on a monthly basis or whenever you need to. So for the tested purposes of doing demos, I'm running it every day. Not really ideal, but you can actually have that running if you want every day. So if you have anyone basically now, or once we launch FileMaker 2025, going is, I don't want to have this certificates because it's too hard to do. All they have to do is click on this button, type in the domain name, and bang, they have a Let's Encrypt SSL certificate on their machine. So no one now can actually complain that they can't actually have an SSL certificate because it's too much work. I will personally come to their house and burn them if I have to. Release date, as I said, early summer. So we're looking sort of June, July.
I'll hold you to that SSL thing when we do 4 servers at the same time and make sure they work, but I'll let the guys know.
I'd like to tell you
yeah,
that I actually used Claris Studio recently to make a form, for a survey.
Yeah.
So instead of paying for SurveyMonkey, we can now use Claris Studio for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did say June, July. It's around the time frame of June, July. We haven't got a clear date now, but it's around June, July.
What they released was the custom views. So the link that I posted, the what's new is what is in the current version for custom views.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one thing we think to everyone is, so anyone can actually apply for actually get a studio account. If you're a partner, you already actually have one. If you're not, you just basically go to the studio page on the Claris website. There's a link. All you have to do is basically has a valid FileMaker contract, and then you can actually start using it. It's kind of because the thing is, so we kind of shifting a bit basically into the way we actually approaching sort of software or selling it or promoting it. But it's always like is in FileMaker we give you new features, and then whether you actually use them or not, it's part of the product. You have it, and then we give you time basically to be able to enjoy it, figure out use cases, and eventually kind of fall in love with it. The one thing we didn't really do, I think, properly basically on the studio and Connect was like, hey, people are not using it. Should we change what we're doing with it and stuff like that? So the kind of a shift is basically saying is, well, we are not selling just FileMaker and Studio and Connect separately. We're giving the whole platform to all our customers. So they have FileMaker for purposes, they have Connect, they have Studio. And it's going to take time basically for people to be able to actually appreciate what they can do with all of the sort of those tools from the toolkit, because they have a solution that already runs and they don't want to change everything on day one. So it takes time for people to be on latest version. But the idea that we're basically saying is, well, there's stuff that you've been trying to actually do in FileMaker that FileMaker will never be able to actually do properly. And Studio can actually sort of do that because we have more control. There's a lot of sort of web-based system that we have. There's a lot of JavaScript inside it, so a lot easier to be able to actually sort of do them. And so the idea is to go as well, we give everything to everyone, and then we basically give them the time to be able to actually start enjoying it and actually getting more out of it than they would actually sort of in the past. We're trying to actually sort of make it easier for people to just not go as well. I don't see the benefit of Studio. I'm never going to ever use it again. Because we have features in FileMaker that when they first released, no one actually used them. And people were saying, well, I'm never going to use that. And now everyone's using it. Like JSON, when it came out, we had people loving it or people saying, what was the point? now a lot of people are actually sort of using it. So we need to actually give time for everyone to kind of adapt and to actually sort of go through what's coming out. So obviously on Student Connect, the release cycle is a lot quicker than in FileMaker, but we still need to be able to make sure that people take the time to actually see what's out there and actually sort of start coming in. And like everyone's saying is at first you're like Studio, you look at it and you're like, well, I don't really see the benefit of it. And then you have someone like Christian goes, well, actually, I can do service. Before I used to pay someone else to do it. Now I can actually sort of do it pretty much free of charge because it's included in my contract. And I can easily grab the data in FileMaker and then do whatever I need to do in FileMaker because I know exactly how it works. And this is where we want to sort of try to get people to. So.
Great. Thank you, Doug. It's really good to have an update and hear from the man himself who knows what's going on. So yeah, it's really useful. And thank you for coming and talking to us all.
Well, the pleasure as always.
Are you hanging around tonight? Are you?
So I've got 50 minutes, and I've got a meeting to prep the release of FileMaker with Rick. If I can stay for that 10 minutes.
Doug, can I ask one very quick question? I might have missed it because I stepped out for 5 minutes. When you're talking about the LLMs and having a server that runs that, if you're on a site license, as we are, FB and Titan, we could spin up as many servers we wanted to do the LLM processing.
Yeah, so your site license basically is you can have one server running per user. So if you have, I don't know, I can't remember your site license, but if you have a site license,
350 users,
then you can have 350 servers running.
Fine. That was the question I wanted to ask and see how it works when the license.
And the thing is, even if you had just had a normal FileMaker user license and you were running 20 LLM servers on the side, wouldn't actually sort of matter too much to us. We'll basically send an email saying you're pretty much allowed to actually sort of do it, but that wouldn't be a problem.
I can't see the need to license that many servers, but I wanted to ask the question anyhow. That's fine. Cool, brilliant.
Anyone else got anything they want to ask Doug whilst he's here? And if not, maybe message him in the chat whilst he is, if you think of something later. But in the meantime, I think we'll just head on over to, we probably won't have that discussion about licensing, because I'm sure the rest of the time is going to be filled with John, because John always has loads of stuff to say and people have questions to ask. So, John, thank you very much first, Doug, as I said. And John, if you're ready, feel free to leap in and talk to us about OData, some of which I guess follows on from what Doug's been saying.
Tiny bit, but yeah. Well, let's dive into it. So let me go share that and go to there. Because this is, you all said, oh, could you do a reprise of your Engage presentation? So some of it is that, and it's in Keynote, which is not my favorite tool. So let's start with why I created this presentation. So at Engage in 2024, I sat in a session that Clay was doing, talking about where OData was going in the future. And I went, well, that's really interesting. And some of the things that were going to be new, so the version that was introduced last summer, has made some significant changes. So the idea was, well, why don't I actually talk about it, Engage in depth, having used it for quite a bit. And the two big things were going to be a change to how OData was connecting to the server, so that effectively OData was going to have its own leg, and the current ODBC listener was going away, and ODBC calls would be converted to OData calls. So OData was going to become a much better citizen in terms of talking to the server. And they were moving from up to be version 4.01 compliant. So that is the background to some of the things that I'll share. They are things that are in 4.01. But obviously, I've just come back from Engage this year. So for those who went, the videos are available. For those who paid for them, they're available. But for everybody else, you'll have to wait another, I don't know, 6 weeks or something to get the videos. But what did Clay say this year? Well, I talked to him and said, "Oh, how are you getting along with this? You know, make OData its own kind of leg." And he said, "Well, to be fair, I haven't done very much on it because I got very distracted by all the things that the Connect team wanted me to do, some of which Doug's kind of mentioned. But obviously, because Clay said it, I can now talk about it. So that on top of what I'm going to show, there are some new things that are coming even in the next version. So being able to get value lists from OData, which you can't do at the moment. It's a very FileMaker-y thing. Being able to do aggregate calculations. And the big thing that he kind of sneaked in at the end was, oh, well, the data API just isn't going to get any further development. It's going to be like the XML gateway. It's there, it works, but we're never going to touch it ever again. OData is the way of the future. All new features will come in via OData, and obviously, so it doesn't mean it's going to, data API is going to stop working, but OData is where they're putting all the future development, and that eventually there would be an execute OData script step that wasn't going out using external HTTP, but they'd find a way to kind of make it work. So there's a kind of there's lots of stuff happening. Initial stuff delayed, but what it does mean is that the OData connector has had a lot of love and attention by Claris engineers because they're using it themselves in Connect. So that means they're paying attention to things like performance and features. So the value list thing will be driven by a new system table, which has the value lists in them. So you'll be able to get that back from the query. Things like the aggregating is because OData is going to have to match what you can do with an ODBC query, where you can get back a sum or a max or a min. So that is coming quite soon, and supporting as, so you can get column naming. So create this aggregate as something, and that will come back. Introduces inline maths. But let's reiterate, this is the place where all the future features are going to hang out. I feel like, you know, having spoken about very little else for 3 to 4 years, that I clearly backed the right horse, shall we say. Beginning of presentation. The other reason that OData is important is actually nothing to do with FileMaker. It's the fact that OData is an external standard, and it means that people from the outside of our world who know about how to write OData type queries, whether that's web developers or people who are using Power BI, Click, those kind of things, can talk to our server in a way that is standard. Obviously, it's independent of the context, the FileMaker context, because it's not based on layouts, it's based on table occurrences. Clay mentioned that apparently in the XML code, they're referred to all the time as table aliases, because that's what they thought they wanted them to be called. We've all stuck with table occurrence, and that's what developers made it work. But obviously, basic authentication. But what we now have is, so we're used to reading the documentation for how to talk to another API. Here's an API for Clockify or for Zero or something. OData is an API for FileMaker Server that you can talk to using all of the RESTful methods. It allows us to kind of split our work up. The big thing is that we just become a citizen with other systems that can do OData. SAP, mostly built on top of OData. All of Microsoft, the Microsoft Graph API, built on top of OData. So the things that we learn by learning OData in FileMaker actually has a benefit for us in the outside world. But the big thing is that people in the outside world can just talk to our FileMaker server data. So I think that's a really big use case. It's not just about what we're doing. And so 4.01, within the specification, it has 3 different levels that you can say, you declare, this is where I'm at with this level. And it's a whole list of, it must do this, you mustn't do this, you should be able to do this, and you've got to apply with everything else. If you go to some OData source / a file and then do / $metadata format XML in a browser, scroll right down to the bottom of the XML, you will see what FileMaker is declaring to the outside world, that it's at the level of intermediate. For version 4.01, Claris Server is compliant with the intermediate bit of the standard. Okay. There's a few other things down there that it'll tell you what it doesn't support. But that's where we're kind of at. One of the big things about introducing 4.01 is it broke something. So if you're doing an OData query that includes returning a count as part of the whole package, then in version 4.01, all of the kind of nodes at the top, including the count, had @OData as a prefix. So obviously you'd run a query, then get the count. So if there was a record, it did exist, and if the count was 0, the record didn't exist, so you could make it. In 4.01, that suddenly turned into @count. So instead of searching for @OData.count, you were now searching for @count. And it broke quite a few of my things that I'd written when I moved. It may not affect you if you weren't doing that, but there's a reason for it, but it wasn't published. I think I've been the only person who's talked about it in the community. So that was a negative side of the change, but what we are going to talk about is the positive side of it. You can make Claris Server running OData version 4.01 behave as if it's 4.0, a bit like saying you can make your car behave like a 1960s version of a Mini, mostly by taking out 2 of the cylinders and putting a lump of concrete in the back and putting some tiny wheels on. The question is, why would you want to do that? But you can make it do it. So a couple of screenshots. The screenshots are from just some Postman queries. So at the back, you will see 4.01 query is returning @context. The same query, if I'm forcing it to be version 4.0, puts the @OData in the front just by having the header OData max version 4.0. So you can make it work backwards if you are so inclined. So new features that have appeared since last summer. First one is casting. So this is about field types, okay? Number and text are the main ones, but we'll talk about some other things. But in OData, we can now explicitly return a result in a type that is different to the way that the data is stored. We're going to jump on to the demo. So for example, the back query, there's a field called total in this example, and as you can see, it's returning a value of 2345, which is a numeric value. So that's going to be stored as a number field. But if I, at the end of the query, if I say, oh, I'd like this as a /edm.string, EDM stands for entity data model. If I have that back as a string, the same query will return that 2345 as a string, not as a number. So I can make a number come back to me as a string. Whether I could make a string appear as a number, whole separate thing. Interesting thing is, if you use the get UUID number, for example, you can end up with a very long number. If you query it with an OData query, you will get back, I got back the whole of a long number in the top query. we also know that if you then, it's in the JSON, you now can't do anything with it. You won't be able to get that value in any way that's remotely usable to you. But therefore, what you can do is, if you know you're storing a very long number, you can return it to yourself, as you can see at the bottom, as a string value instead of a number. So all of the types that are available for converting in OData are here. Some of them not relevant to us, things like a Boolean, because there isn't a Boolean field type, but that's everything that OData could do. It also works. The back query says filter. I want to filter the total to where it's 2, 3, 4, 5. But I've written, obviously this is a test case that says, oh, could you, if I made that total field a string instead, could I find that field where it equals 2, 3, 4, 5 as a string? And as you can see at the back, it has found the record. It doesn't, casting doesn't, I thought, oh, here's an interesting thing. If you, when we order records, you know that if it's a number field and you order it, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 works. If it's a text field with the same data in it, you'll have all of that 1, 10, 11, 12 because of the way that text sorting works. I wondered if, we could make it so that I could order it by making this number field a string. It doesn't work, it's not supported. So there we go. So at the top, I've queried a timestamp field. This is how a timestamp comes back in an OData query. At the bottom, what I've done is go, I've got a date field, but could you give it me back? So /edm.date time offset. So it's turned a date field into a timestamp. So instead of having to get the date, if you need it as a timestamp, convert it in your JSON that you've got back. Obviously, a date has no time component. So the timestamp comes back with 0:00, so it comes back as midnight. But it is now, it's already a timestamp. So if the thing that you're writing, a web type thing, needs a timestamp, but you've only got a date field, you can convert them. So at the back, there's my long number field again. You can do a conversion. So at the bottom, I've gone, give me back that number field as a 64-bit integer /int64. And it makes no sense to do that because you can't put that big number into an integer 64. You lose data, and what you get back is nothing to do with what's above. So my mantra for these things is just because you can doesn't mean you should. Certainly go and play, but that's one thing. Second new feature is about the introduction of parameters into your queries. So think execute SQL where you put a question mark, and at the end of the whole thing you have a series of parameters. That's now included in OData. So anywhere in the query, anything that you preface with an @ symbol. So first example, I'm using @p1. So this is to get a UID to put in to be the key for a project. So @p1 is a parameter. Then after the question mark, I'm then defining what that parameter is. So @p1 is your UID. Well, clearly there's very little benefit to me doing that other than just showing, hey, it works. But we can start to, at the bottom, write more complex queries where the same thing is being repeated. But it's not just that the same thing is being repeated, it's that we want to also modify that. So the third example, we're looking at projects and we're going to filter them where the total is greater than something, but the cost is less than something, and that something is 50. So that's how to read that in English. easier to write. That query then can stay. I don't have to be escaping things in the middle to put in new values, because I just have to put one value that changes at the end of that string. So if I want that same query to run with a parameter of 100, I only have to put that in one place. For example, the next example says, find me things where the total is less than this thing times 2, and the cost is less than this. That's just a link to where to learn about it on the Microsoft site. So that introduces us to the introduction of, so instead of on top of text comparators, it's just the vocabulary of the thing that we're doing, we now have access to mathematical operators. So those are the mathematical operators you need to learn, or how those things work. So something MUL 2 is that multiplied by 2. Something sub 300, that less 300. Okay, there you go, that's for reference. So here's a couple of queries running live. The one at the back says, find me records where the total is greater than or equal to this parameter times 2, and the cost is less than or equal to this parameter. That parameter is 2000. So there we have something where the total is in fact greater than or equal to 4000, and the cost is less than or equal to 2000. So query works. At the bottom, find me anything where the cost less 300 is greater than or equal to 2000. So it's not just that you can use the parameters, you can use that maths in the filter that you're doing. At any point, if anybody wants to reach out to me while they're writing some things like that, then feel free. The next thing is the way that nesting works in the queries. Not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it shuffles around where you can do things like filters or selects by nesting them. So I think the bottom one is kind of the most it's most interesting. The last line, we want to expand the projects, but I'm selecting the description and the total. Normally you'd have to write expand is projects / description and projects / total, which is a little clunky to work with. This does simplify the way that we can write queries. There's some good examples, actually. It's one of the few places where there's some good examples in the Claris help, because Claris help is not always brilliant. So if we want to, so here's a single query. It's for a client who has 2 projects. And if I use the expand, that says, hey, I want to get back data from, so it's using that previous example, I want to get back a couple of fields from the project. So here's the client, and I've got 2 projects with a description and total. Okay, so I'm kind of skinnying down my data. I maybe want to use this here. I may want to be driving a website from it. If I just do, so this is the whole interesting thing. If I just say, oh, can I have the projects? So $select is projects. Our first instinct is to go, oh, well, that will give me everything from the project that's linked to it. Not at all. It will, in this case, it will just give you a link to the project. OData is a navigation-based thing. How do I get from the starting point to the data that you're looking at? This is the link to get to that project, not the whole thing. If you want to see data from it, you have to use expand. But the bottom part, we can now also use a special keyword called $ref. So for this client, find me the projects / $ref. Give me back the references for the project, and you'll get back something that looks like that. So it's a slightly different query to just putting / projects. Here's the demo of it. The bottom example is the best one. So I said, for this client, projects / $ref, and all I'm getting back literally is an @ID. at ID is a navigatable link. So you could, you can put that into some kind of button, click that, and that will take you to that whole record, show you the whole record if that's what you want to do. Another new feature is is now supported for queries. Previously, if you wanted to write a query, it could end up where this equals this, or this equals this, or this equals that, or this equals the other. In says you can, in a filter, you can now take a comma-separated list of potential values. So find me the project where the description is in this little list. The description's either Billy or Bertie in this case. This works only in 21.1.1. It's not remotely backwards compatible, but it does significantly simplify queries. So here, for example, is that exact query. Find me the projects where the description is either Billy or Bertie. It also works with numeric values. So the next query is find me projects where the field called the status is in 1 or 2 or 3. So if you can see the status, there is 1, 3, and 2 in that order. Makes queries a lot simpler, in my opinion. Some other kind of tips around stuff. If you're used to doing SQL queries and you want to limit the data that you get back, and you're doing OData, you've got that experience, then the top keyword will limit how much data you get back. The very interesting thing is that if you're adding the @count equals true to say, hey, I'd like to get back a counter with this, if you put top on it, if you put just give me back 1 record, but there are 40 in the found set that match it, but you say just give me that first one, then the count, the @count returns the found set, not the returned set. Okay? So you may get back 1 value because you've asked for 1 value, but there may be 40 that match. Interestingly, if you put top equals 0, so as in, here's a found set, but just don't give me any data back, count now goes to 0, not 40, and the value obviously becomes an empty array. I found that a little counterintuitive because I felt, oh, here's a good idea. Rather than running the whole query, just run a query to find out how many there are, but don't give me any data back for the moment, because then I can work out how I'm going to parse it. The second thing in there is about the support for large data sets. As people are going to start to use OData queries a lot more, well, I've got millions and millions of records I want to query. Don't do it on millions of records, but excuse me, each OData provider makes their own decision about what is the maximum number of records they'll deliver back to you at any one time. And it's mostly published. And the reason is that if you have 500,000 records, you don't want to run a query on 5,000 records and get them all back, because you'll end up killing the server. So a way of doing that, and it works in web as well, we page the results. We just get back the first set of results. And then either as you scroll down a page or you ask for another query, click next, it'll produce the next set of results. Claris have decided that 10,000 is their ceiling. It's at the top of the range. Other people have only 5,000 you can get back. You get back 10,000, but in the data that gets back, there's a next link, a skip token, basically, that says, oh, here's the query that you use now if you want to get back the next 10,000. I had somebody ask me a question, which is, if you get back 10,000 records, and then you delete one of them before you make the next query, what happens to record 10,001? And the answer is you won't ever see it, because it's now included in the first 10,000 records, and you've said skip the first 10,000 and go on. So don't do things that mess about with record counts. Obviously, the issue there is if somebody else deletes it, you may end up skipping records that you should have seen. You can limit the record you get back in two ways. $top in the query, but in the header, you can use this prefer header, prefer OData.max page size to be 1500. So you can limit it in both ways. All my tests, there's absolutely no difference in performance. The difference is in what you get back in the return header. Another counterintuitive thing, I was having a conversation with Brother Todd of this parish a few months ago about whether or not you could query for a specific record using two key field values. So if you have a field called unique ID and some other key field, unique ID has got a UID in it, but this other field has got 22 in this example case in it. Can you make that work? And the answer is yes, it absolutely works. That you can make this is the, how do I get to this one record that I'm looking for? It's got to have both the unique ID field as this and the key field as this to find it. Genuinely, if one of those two words is ID, it won't work. Even with escaping, it just won't work. It's one of the places where ID doesn't work. But it's an interesting case where if a user is providing you with a unique ID to be able to get to a record, but you, as the data owner, have a way of saying, oh yes, but can you actually get to see that record? You have to not only have the data that you've provided me, which is one half of this, but the data that I've provided to be able for you to get this record. It's an interesting kind of use case. If you add $value, I'm going to show this in a second, to your query, you don't get back JSON, you just get back the answer. And there may be times when that is what you really, really need. And if you just put $count at the end of your query, you will just get the count back, no other data. So here, for example, is that first query working? You'll see that the unique ID ends in 43A4, but the other field down at the bottom, other key, is 22. So it's found that one record because both of those conditions were true. Here's a field called description. In the back, it's in JSON as big red. But if I put $value, I'm literally just getting the string back. So there are times when, if you're doing a query to find a piece of data, you don't necessarily want or need to have it in JSON. You can just get it as a string, which I found very interesting. If you, so one of the things, OData 4.1 says, oh, those $signs in front of things like filter and select are optional. I've left them in because it's easier to see them. If you try and put $value, going, oh, it's okay, I can drop the $sign, it's not supported, it doesn't work. So there's again a little bit of experiment with how things are supported. There is, to be fair, stuff which is still not yet implemented, and this is my personal list of things that I'd love to see. This was a idea of going, hey, we've got Claris engineers in the room. Excuse me, why don't we go and talk to them? So aggregate is supported, but $compute is not. Compute would allow you to not just do aggregate on the data, but be able to do things like create a full name from a first name and a surname by concatenating them. Compute is not supported. There's also an OData header, which is prefer omit values equals nulls, so that any field that has a null value in it wouldn't get returned in the answer. Pros and cons of why that might work, but if you have a large table, that would help skinny down the responses that you've got. And clearly, if you do a JSON get element on something which doesn't even have an element, you'll get the same answer as if it's null, which is nothing. Thank you very much. For me, one of the big things to move towards supporting is, at the moment, the only place in which we're not talking JSON is in doing batches. So batches are written as a multi-part submission, a bit like writing multi-part emails. They're a pain in the ass to write. You have to use the right syntax. You have to use the right carriage returns. You have to calculate the content length because you have to submit the content length. That Microsoft link takes you to saying, hey, this is how this works by being able to create your batches in JSON. A lot easier to do. It would make everything that we're talking to backwards and forwards to OData into a JSON transaction. There are headers for if, they're called if match and if non-match. So one of the things is in other systems it's called an upsert. So if this record exists, update it, and if this record doesn't exist, insert it. So that's a portmanteau word of both of those things by using those headers. So rather than doing a query that does a get to find out if the record exists, and then doing something with if it exists, do a patch, and if it doesn't, do a post. Those headers would help with that job. Some other syntax things, being able to do a filter on order by and do a count at the root level, or being able to say, find me where the count of the projects is 2. That's not supported by Claris yet. And is find me something where the type of data is this. Also not supported. And the other thing they're going to have to solve in comparison to the data API is how to do updating both the parent and the child record at the same time. So technically it's called a deep update. So in one go, being able to update the parent and the child, which is in our language, that's a portal data, at the moment not supported in any kind of way. So there you go. I've rushed through a bunch of things. The full version of that will be available, and the videos are out with me speaking slightly more slowly and a bit more explanation. But there you go. Clearly, any questions and or discussion about that? Let me find my mouse and try and stop sharing. There we go.
Always good, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got 3 or 4 sources I'm pulling into Click from OData, same process, same problems. I pull it all into Click and don't worry about the is null because I deal with that once it's in. So I pull it in and then transpose it once it's in. So it would be nice to have the query to say only pull the stuff that relates. That would be nice. I think if that comes, that would be great.
I think it's something that if it was there, it has some specific use cases that I can see. But obviously the big thing is Clay announcing, hey, this is going to get all the new features. I think what he said out loud was somebody asked him, oh, could we add this to the data API to make it behave in this kind of way? And just said, no, sorry. That's the official line now. It's not going to stop working. It's just not going to get any future development. So it's sort of stuck where it is. And because of everything that's happening around the fact that Claris Connect is now using OData. So if you, in the new connector that, connects using the on record update trigger in Studio, if you update a record or create a record, you can run a Claris Connect flow that's triggered by that. And then you pass the data across into FileMaker. The card that you're using to fill out what you're doing is basically building an OData query in the background. It's going to get familiar. And I talked to Louis about the fact that, would it be cool if I could copy and paste? If I can write the OData query myself already, could I just copy and paste it into there rather than me have to type in 5 different boxes? And he said, that's one of the places where they're thinking about making it much more, for people like power users. But the issue is they discovered that it's the best way, it's the most performant way to move the data between the two systems. At the moment, so the other place of development that will happen is around container handling. At the moment, the data API is the best way to move container data. But there will be some extra work happening. So the thing about OData is it's a standard, and then you can put whatever you want on top of it, as long as you support the standard. So the fact that what is coming next is we will be able to get value lists from an OData query. None of the rest of the world will be doing that, but there's a reason why. It means they can stop using the data API to get back value list information from the metadata from FileMaker. So OData will move so that it can fully replace the data API in the connector, and then we'll get the side benefit of all of that work basically. So
just to confirm, John, is FileMaker supporting version 4.01 or 4.1 or both?
It's no, 4.01 is the latest. That was a typo on my slide.
Right, I was going to say.
So all the previous versions of FileMaker Server were OData 4.0.
Yeah.
And so let's just see if I can do this because we're on a call. Let me just fire up something in the web browser here. If I go to, I'm just going to write a quick URL. OData test.
Why you do that, John? As a rule of thumb, something I've started developing in and putting into all the code is I'm paginating now everything I write as off the shelf. I don't take it that the fact that the data source might give me 10,000 rows, might give me 1,000 rows. I don't care. I just paginate everything into groups of 100 all the time now and just go, right, if I write the code that way, I don't care the data set I pull. If I pull a data set that's got 1 million records, it will process it. So this is just the rule of thumb I've been developing now.
So here's in a browser. So the point about OData is you can just check your URLs by sticking them in a browser. That's the first thing, because it's getting JSON back. The browser knows how to do that. So here's a URL / a file / metadata. So this tells you what version it's running and what this is on. And this is a future version, shall we say. But if I change that URL to an older server, you'd see 4.0 here. Let me just show you the thing I said. Whereas if you do !, format equals XML, it returns the same data in XML. If you scroll right down to the bottom, that's where it says that the conformance level is intermediate. It says that this is supported. That is supported, that's supported. So continue on error for a batch is supported, but asynchronous requests are not supported. So it's self-declaring. But anyway, so if you just viewed it as HTML rendering of the JSON data, if you do a / metadata query, you
Yeah.
will see what version is running. So the version that was released last summer supports 4.01. 4.01 is the latest version of OData. It's been around for several years,
Yeah.
but it was a .01 rev number increase, but it was actually quite a lot of feature. I think it deserved a whole number itself, not a .01, but that's a whole separate thing.
Fine.
So there we go. Anybody else got any queries or points? If not, I can hand back to Joel.
No, I'm all good, mate. Thank you.
Great. Excellent. Thank you, John. Fascinating as always. And yeah, it's thought-provoking.
Well,
fascinating.
I think, like I said at the beginning, given that Claris announced, hey, this is where all the future development is, I think it's a good time if people haven't. I still get surprised. Mind you, I haven't used the AI features that much, let's be honest. But I do presentations and people go, oh, I haven't used OData at all. That is the way that the developer community is, that a new feature gets introduced 3 years ago and people still haven't used it. Partly it's a job of somebody like me to demonstrate what you can do with it, but also be able to provide materials to people that give people a fast route into learning it, rather than having to plow through documentation, which in some cases the Claris documentation is not only not very good, it's also wrong in a couple of places. And I've pointed that out in a few, so that's not helpful if the only documentation you have is not doesn't work. And one of the other things I see is that people read documentation that's on the OData website or on the Microsoft website, and then come back and go, oh, this query should work. And you get back into FileMaker and it's like, no, it doesn't work. Somebody was arguing the other day about why this didn't work, and I said, it's because you've got $compute in it. $compute is not supported. But equally, I can show you things in the Microsoft Graph API where Microsoft don't even support some things that they wrote. And all of the Graph API is running on OData 3. So there's all kinds of things that I know how to do in OData, and you go, oh, I'll just do that as a query, and it just comes back as not supported. So you, like most of these things, you have to, build some stuff and then see if it works. And if it doesn't work, is it because you did it wrong or because they just don't support it?
I just want to add to that, John, is the fact that when you get to that point, then whack the damn thing in Claude and let it work out how to fix it for you, because that's what I'm doing at the moment. It's just like, okay, I want to do that query, but can I do that from an OData source? All right, I'll whack that in there and tell me whether or not I'm going.
That was the issue with that particular discussion. Somebody had done that. It is obviously those models have gone off and scraped essentially publicly facing information. Yeah. So it is, the thing they were talking about is in the specification, but Claris have no obligation to support it. I want them to, but they don't have to in the future. Yeah. So just because some form of AI model tells you that, hey, this is how you write this query, doesn't mean it's supported. And the problem is, if you're doing that without the right level of both knowledge and intrigue, you won't know which of the things that you've written doesn't work straight off.
I agree. I think you need a base level, and this is the problem with AI and where it's going, is you need a base level of knowledge to understand what comes back, to sense check it and make sure it's right. If it circumvents 3 hours of writing code, great, it serves its purpose, but you still got to be able to check that code, make sure it's valid and make sure it's supported. And I think the support thing is the big thing around various technologies at the moment. And exactly as you're saying, is the fact that certain vendors are supporting different levels of documentation, and that's where there's a grey area. So.
Yeah, I think it's the whole thing with AI, which you were talking about earlier, Gary. I think it's a tool. So people have slowly come around to the realization it's a tool, but there is a huge area of missing knowledge about how the tool works and what's appropriate to do with the tool and the limitations of the tool. And we're at a stage where we've got to learn that. And once we learn that, then we can use the tool effectively.
Yeah, as I say, I did something earlier last week on something, and it said he wanted to flatten it and then optimize it for data models and go and so forth. And I said, yeah, go ahead and do that. And I took that data model and put it in there, and it had about 30 odd mistakes in it. And it's just like, it just didn't run. The theory was true, and the theory is correct. And it's only because the knowledge that I had to then go and interpret that response and go, it's got this bit wrong, that bit wrong, that bit wrong. If you fix those first 3 header pieces of information that are coming back, it then functioned. But you've got to have an understanding of that knowledge. I think it'll get there. I think it's that thing in time. It will get there and it will get a lot better. But certainly for OData and that side of it, I think there's areas of as you were saying, John, is the fact that people don't understand that as a technology that has been released several years ago and they're still not using it. I think
people use what they're comfortable with, and once they're comfortable with something, they carry on doing that for as long as possible.
And until they're exposed to exactly.
Claris are going to, as you say, John, they're now using it within the product, so it is the route forward.
Yes,
so I think that will actually.
It's until you're exposed to that technology. I think that's the key thing. When you're exposed to it, you then just go, well, okay, I've got to then learn this. I've got to move this forward and start using it. It's something that's established. And I'm pleased that FileMaker is supporting it, which is great.
And possibly the use of AI will facilitate that a bit more than has been some of the things in the past.
Well, we architecturally, we have people who'll design files as if they were designing them in FileMaker 9 or 10, because that's what they are experienced in. You get customer files and you look in it, it's like not a single custom function. How can you survive without custom functions? You must be have one leg or something. It's ridiculous. It's that, I agree, it's a comfort zone, isn't it? It's like I do this thing because I know it works. The thing in FileMaker, there's 5 ways for everything to work. One of them may or may not be better than the other, but it may be a different way of doing it in a different circumstance. Something else might, and obviously people get terribly zealous about promoting their way of doing things, but it's that whole thing about, I've written it, it works. Nobody has the incentive to go back and rewrite it and see whether or not it performs better, to see whether there's some features they could add to it. Quick for example, as that is by moving to JSON to be able to pass parameters. It's been an eye-opener because it's standardized how everybody can do it. But adding a new thing to your set of parameters is now a piece of cake. Whereas any other method that you used before, like adding it to a list of things, you had to go and check that it worked in the scripts and it wasn't empty, and So my argument would be learning the new stuff can bring us new ways of developing, which can be smarter, and particularly where we can copy and paste whole pieces of code that we know works. We just changed the authentication, changed the URL, change the data payload. So there you go.
Okay, I think at this point we should probably switch the recording off and move to the bar, virtual bar.
Nice to see you returned, Chris.
And everyone can talk freely. So I will turn that recording off. I think that's off.